The questions raised in this session, before I make my comments, one question has been raised regarding dharma. Because I mentioned in my inaugural address two questions virtually. One, a verbal question, how it is related to truth. Another question, dharma, explanation of Sanatana Dharma in Indian context. So there are two separate questions. I am very glad to know that you have raised these questions, because dharma is related to truth also, and moreover, dharma gives you a general direction, like Kantian categorical imperative. Kant says, act in such a way that your action becomes universal, or it is universalizable. He formulated in 5 ways. Moreover, act in such a way that you do not treat human beings as a means to an end, or merely as a means to an end, but as an end in itself, or human beings ends in themselves. So our conception of dharma, because you raised two questions, Sanatana Dharma and dharma, how it is related to truth, there are two separate questions. If you go back to the meaning of the word dhri, then that which holds dharma. Dhri plus man suffix. I was asked by one Swamiji who got branches in 27 countries to write on dharma and spirituality. So I was encouraged by Swamiji's, One is, what is dharma? It supports, X is dharma means it supports the world. Dharati lokan. Dharma supports the human society as well as the world. Yo lokan dharati yena manava samajo dhrita sa dharma. Third meaning, it will help those who have fallen, are about to fall, or will fall. Patitam, patantam, patishantam, dharati iti dharma. It is the foundation of the universe as well as of the world. Dharma is the foundation of the universe. Dharma leads to something higher, such as peace and bliss. Dharma also supports but also nourishes. It is a condition for the growth, nourishes and supports. And dharma also leads to happiness as well as beauty too. And dharma leads to a higher state or more noble state, but adharma leads to a lower or degraded state. Dharmena gamanam urdha gamanam adhastat bhavati adharmena. Then my guru Pandit Dinesh Shastri asked me to add this one. Dharma means X. Dharma is real or truth. Yo dharma sattam vaitat. Now, these are general directions, like scientific theories or Kantian categories. Then you have certain rules. In this situation, what I ought to do. You can find out whether in this situation it will reduce suffering, alleviate suffering, or increase suffering. So there are certain sub-rules. And then you have some particular situations where what I ought to do. There also, these will be guidelines. They are like beacon lights. It is not related to a particular sect, a particular religion. It is for all. Kant went up to human beings. Do not treat human beings merely as a means to an end. But our conception goes beyond human beings. Do not treat any living being merely as a means to an end. Do not treat nature, even tree, as a means to an end. That is why there is a praschitra, propitiation ceremony, for cutting trees with fruits and flowers. One anecdote, that you have respect for nature, respect for mountain, respect for ocean, respect for rivers. That is why people, look at the river and they worship the rivers in different places, mountains. When Hillary and Tenzing scaled the mountain, Tenzing has a thought, a respect, adoration, and he worshipped. And what Hillary said, I will not utter it, that I have conquered this. So, dharma is something which changes your mind, purifies your mind, and it is something which will ultimately bring about peace and happiness in an individual, in a society, and world at large. This conception is absent in Western civilization. Kant went up to human beings, treat every human being in the same way, but not living beings, not nature, not trees, not mountains and rivers. So this is one point. Second point, that why it is on a par with truth. Scientists try to find out the real structure of nature, some rules, some truths. H2O produces water. And scientific theories also keep on changing in the light of new investigations. So you can predict things and it is verifiable. Similarly, dharma is verifiable. What will support our life? What will nourish our life? You can find out from experiment. And if you can come across something which supports our life, which can increase our happiness, decrease suffering of a particular person or society or the world, then you follow that path. Therefore, it is on a par with scientific truth. Our conception of life is purely based on experiment and science. That is why it is also said that these rules of dharma, moral codes, are not fixed for all time to come. I am quoting a passage. The moral code of dharma are to be learned from each generation, from what has been observed or allowed by learned persons. Learned persons means like scientists, who are good and ever free from hatred and inordinate affection. That reminds me of Sister Nivedita, that you cannot apprehend the truth unless your mind is free from hatred, mind is free from selfishness. So she has uttered the truth, which is very ancient, and we have not realized. So, couple of things I am mentioning here, that this one is purely scientific. This one gives you a direction, and if there is a conflict between some of the rules, then there is a higher rule which will resolve the conflict. Therefore, it is purely a scientific approach. As in science you have levels of rules, and then you have theories like Einsteinian theory. Similarly, here also we have supreme rules, higher rules, lower rules, and then particular situation where individual can exercise his or her decision based on this knowledge. That is why Indian philosophers have emphasized knowledge, and there is nothing purer than knowledge, they have claimed. So this point, I think, will illuminate. And why it is called Sanatana Dharma? Because these rules are not fixed at a particular time, at a particular place, or fixed for a particular individual. That is why it is Sanatana. It has no boundary. That means in this country only we can practice this. You can practice it anywhere, at any time. For that reason, it is called Sanatana Dharma. So I hope I have answered these questions for you. Second point, there are some questions raised here that it is addressed to Chakraborty, Shamiran Chakraborty, regarding his talk about Vedic rituals. Vedic rituals, whether they have meaning. Now that depends on the concept of meaning. Meaning, there are different senses of the word meaning. The performance itself has its meaning. By performing certain things, you are demonstrating what ought to be done. And you may not know that it will lead you to something higher, but by performing that something, you may attain some goal which is higher, which is dharmic goal. For that reason, even if a person performs something but does not know the goal, but it will lead you to that goal, because our systems emphasize causation. Causation means if you have these causal factors, then it will produce this effect. So all the systems of Indian philosophy are heavily loaded with causal talk, including Buddhism. So even if, as he pointed out, Shamiran Chakraborty, that there are performances, these sacrifices, but you do not know the meaning of it, so some scholars say it is meaningless. But I am claiming, following Shamiran Babu, who is not here, trying to defend his view, that it has its meaning because causal process will lead you to some effect, desired effect. And we do not know those effects. Those effects are mentioned in the Vedic literature, although a particular person may not know that effect.
Can I say one?
Sure. Yeah, it is meant for that.
No, I just wanted to know whether rituals can have meaning, whether rituals can have purpose, effectiveness. But
Now,
I don't know.
yes.
It must have some. When it started,
Can
there must
you hold
be,
the mic up a little?
Yes.
when the word meaning is not properly used here probably, because rituals may have some effect, some purpose, but it does not have any meaning.
Now the point is, sometimes meaning is used in the sense of the goal. It has meaning means what is the purpose, what is its utility, what it leads to.
Yes. So when originally the rituals were started, it must have some goal, it must have some
That's
purpose.
right.
During the practice, it must have evaded or faded.
Yes, sometimes you may not know the goal, but it will lead you to the goal because of causal connection. Because of causal connection, that it will lead you to that goal. It is a causation. You are performing certain things, therefore you attain some goal. Even if you do not know the goal, but it will lead you to that goal. So it has meaning in the sense that it has some end. It will produce some effect. Sometimes it is said the effect is, you go to heaven, or the effect is it will produce some apurva. Of course, Mimamsa does not accept God, but apurva has got causal efficacy. So it will produce some effect, disposition, which has causal efficacy. And that causal efficacy may lead you to happiness, may lead you to a state higher than the present state. So it is causally related, and the word meaning can be used in that sense.
Can I put in one word, please?
Some additions.
Can I say something?
Yes.
He's saying me something.
Can I say something, please?
Please go ahead, yes.
I just want to say that when we read Bhagavad Gita, we already find that the Vedic sense, rituals in the Vedic sense, Sri Krishna was not satisfied. He is repeating Jaggodano Tapa in many places, but he has changed the meaning of Jaggo.
That's right.
He doesn't want to retain the ritualistic sense which we find in the Vedas. Jnana Jagga is the best. And just think of that sloka, so well known, Brahmarpanam, Brahma Havir, Brahmagno, Brahmana.
Same thing in Vivekananda's ceremonial things.
They have changed. Those rituals have not been retained.
Now, the thing is...
that may not be the reason why. I think the reason may be that the Buddhists attacked ritualism so strongly that there was an ideological struggle between the two. But the fact of the matter is that rituals do continue to be a very prominent part of Hindu tradition. I mean, a lot of the samskaras, the Vivaha samskaras, the Janma samskaras, the Antyashti and so on, they're still done according to the Vedic rite. And the Arya Samajas, of course, revived Vedic ritualism. Now here's a response from Prabhalda, which to some extent answers the issues that are raised. But it also raises a problem, of course, of meaning, as you ask. So he says that there are three types of rituals: Nitya, Nemitika, and Kamya, of course. So the Nitya ones are things that are not even prudential, they're categorical. You just do them. That's, you're required to do these things. The other ones, well, of course, there are conventions decide there are certain times you need to do them, so you do them. And then the third ones are the ones that are prudential.
Without fail.
Well, without fail, I guess without, not I think the Nemitika one is probably there's a little bit of leeway, some choices. Right. Well, the Nitya ones are without fail, sure.
Without fail.
And then the Kamya ones are if you have some desires and so forth, you want to go to heaven or have some children and so forth. So in that sense, I mean, performance can still have meaning. There are a lot of performative things that we do. We perform.
Sorry, Professor Bilamodi, I am to interrupt to this point. Nitya karma, in case of Nitya karma, is akarane pratyavaya. So it has no result. That's not the point. If one is not able to do the Nitya karma, then he is to face the result, the negative result.
You still have to take the results.
Yes, pratyavaya. That means the something negative. Something negative. Something. It is not only to do. One is to do Nitya karma. He is to practice that.
Yes.
Right? And Kamya karma when desire is there.
When desire is there.
Desire. And Naimittika karma, on some occasions one is to do that.
That's right.
In every case it has some prudential consideration.
Sure.
Akarane pratyavaya means if one is not able to do the Nitya karma, then he is to face that some prudential result.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Well, but I mean, I don't want to get into the technicalities of what each one is about. I mean, that's not what Prabhalda is saying.
They have the prudential consideration.
No. Sure. The question is about whether these things have meaning or not. I mean, that's what he's trying to answer. So he's basically saying that in whatever kind of performances, whether they're categorical or whether they're prudential or whether they're conventional, the meaning is that it is part of a larger structure of a social performative. And there are sociological theories about that. Durkheim and people said people worship society as a whole, and the point of the ritual is to keep certain things going, certain lineages, certain memories going too. Australian Aboriginal people do lots of rituals and so forth, which is how they've kept their sense of identity identity of the community. Different tribes do different kinds of rituals and so forth. And you know, there are sort of initiation ceremonies and so forth too. We might say, well, what's the meaning of that? Well, the meaning is not in the individual performance. The meaning is in the larger context of what this achieves. So it is like what Wittgenstein called a language game. There are language games, there are rules, and you perform certain moves within that. And that's the important part of it. So that's the sort of sense in which there is meaning. But you know, if people go and like Stahl, if he goes and watches a ritual and so he says, what's the meaning of this? Well, that's the wrong place to be looking for meaning. It would be like, you know, in a chess game, you say, well, what's the meaning of this pawn moving from here to there? Well, there is no meaning of that as such. You have to look at it in the context of the whole set of rules of what's going on in the game. So I think
now.
Yes, I think the question of meaning can be raised in another way also. The meaning of the Vedic injunctions. Some of the Vedic statements are, they do mean what they literally mean. And there are other statements, in fact, most of them do not really mean what they appear to mean or what they literally mean.
Sure.
So, questions of meaning can be raised in different ways.
Sure.
And about the distinction between hypothetical and categorical imperatives, the injunctions enjoining one to do the nitya karmas, we must remember that nitya karmas lead to chitta shuddhi, to purification of the mind, and non-performance of the nitya karmas do not lead to sin, but non-performance of the nitya karmas are a mark that sin is accumulating in his soul or in his mind. Because unless one performs these nitya karmas, then one's mind is not purified. And if one's mind is not purified for a long time, then sin or demerit will accumulate either in the self or in the antakarana. So the akarana, non-performance of the nitya karma, is a inferential mark, a ground on the basis of which one can infer that sin is accumulating in the person's soul or in the person's antakarana. The term sadhana doesn't refer to a constitutive condition, but to an epistemic condition or an inferential mark.
that may not be the Mimamsa position. That's the thing.
Now, what is ordained by the Vedas? See, if we are not unable to do them, no problem. But what is prohibited by the Vedas, they should not be done. Yes.
Now, a few questions I think raised about Buddhism. Your question and questions from the audience also. There are two broad questions, or maybe more. One is, what is the referent of the word I, and how the Buddhist would explain the identity of a person, how the Buddhist would explain memory, recognition, and so forth, or afterlife also. Now, I have developed these in my discussion on causality. There is one long section on causality. How to prove that everything is momentary. Proof is reductio. If things are not if there are things, either it is momentary or permanent. So what they did, if something is permanent, they have criticized. These are the alternatives through causation. There are, I think, I have got a diagram, and it is available in my books also. I'll bring that book. If it is permanent, then it cannot produce, it does not have artha-kriya-karitva. So, they have rejected the view that things are permanent. Either it is implicitly permanent or explicitly permanent, or it acts in collaboration with some cause. Why? This is the only philosophy in the world which does not accept potentiality. And in Western philosophy, only existentialism, especially Sartrean type of existentialism, does not accept potentiality. We always say, I would have done this. Buddhists do not accept this. I would have done this, I did whatever I could. So a cause produces whatever it does produce at that moment. We cannot say that it can produce something else or it remains and it can produce. So the diagram will explain that they have rejected this concept of cause, which is something permanent, and thereby they have proved that everything is momentary. Then comes, if everything is momentary, how to explain memory and recognition? Memory and recognition can be explained in terms of momentary series of dispositions. When I touch this table, I get hardness. That hardness is momentary, but it produces a dispositional state which is also momentary. And that dispositional state continues to produce momentary. And then hardness, when I see a table, a chair, then my memory, that disposition of hardness is revived by it. Like in Hume, if you have table and chair, if you cognize table, then if you cognize chair, then the memory of table may be revived. So because of association, one can be revived by another. So the link is causal. So the word I ultimately refers to, in Buddhism, this human beings consist of 12 ayatanas, if you follow that line. Inner ayatana, antara samudaya, will be alay vijnana and pravitti vijnana. And alay vijnana is like the undercurrent of the river. Pandit Guruji also mentioned this, like a river. And pravitti vijnanas, they are like the ripples or waves of the river. And there is a causal connection between them. If there is a ripple, that ripple affects the undercurrent, and thereby undercurrent is modified, and then the next undercurrent, they are all momentary. That one produces another pravitti vijnana, and that pravitti vijnana acts again on the undercurrent. So it is going like this, cause, and then they are upokaris, because they believe in one cause. So the analogy is like a seed produces sapling. When you water the seed, when there is enough air, when there is enough light. They do not use the word auxiliary, upokaris. So the pravitti vijnanas are upokaris, and alay vijnana is like the seed. So they can explain what we call referent of the word I. So your I is different from my I. Therefore, when we die, what continues, not the pravitti vijnana, but the alay vijnana, depending on karmic residue, they also accept karmic residue. Depending on the karmic residue, it will take another body or another being. So, depending on this karmic residue, alay vijnana will form another body, unless you are liberated. Therefore, all of them can be explained in Buddhism. So, this is how I try to understand Buddhism with the help of my gurus. Of course, whatever I will say, if there is any merit, it will be attributed to my guru, and for all the shortcomings, I am to be held responsible.
If all the terms are momentary and they belong to a series, then how do we know that all the first term and the last term, if we compare, how do we know that they belong to the same series?
Now,
if there is nothing permanent outside, how do we know that?
Now the point is, what?
So answer first.
What we do now, this one will keep on producing the result, orthokriyakari. So it will continue. So when
how to know that continuity? How,
now,
if there's nothing permanent outside, as Shankara said, that lamps burning in caves, and if there is nothing to connect them, how do we know that they belong to the same series?
Now,
without something permanent.
Now this point is, if it is known immediately if something occurs and it reveals itself, that revelation itself is knowing that I know that I know this. That one is also.
That is also momentary.
That one is
This
also.
moment I know.
Yes,
This moment
that,
I know that I'm here.
Now-
That's all. But I have no connection with the next term.
now connection is there because causal series. Connection is causal. That means
That is, we are saying that there is a causal connection just because we want to explain that without something bringing in something permanent.
that's right.
But
So
how do we know that there is a causal connection?
now, yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to point out one thing, that you're exploring an argument in a very, it's on. Oh, in a very deep terrain. You're exploring very technical detail. But if this is a reductio, Jay, the way you've set it up, this is an invalid reductio. Because in order for a reductio to be good, the initial disjunction should be exhaustive. But you've said it's impermanent or permanent. That's not exhaustive because some things are semi-permanent. Where's the argument that shows that there's nothing that's semi-permanent?
Now, semi-permanent, their language is potentiality and actuality. So, semi-permanent and permanent, they got potentiality.
They're the same thing? To say
No, they're different, but they got potentiality. So they are removing potentiality from something which you call permanent. I could have done this. I could have done this.
I just don't understand the first premise because it doesn't seem...
Now, first premise is that their language is either it is permanent or it is momentary. If it is permanent, then interpretation is permanent, then it has got potentiality.
Okay.
If it is permanent, then it has got potentiality.
So then the real disjunction is some things have potentiality.
That's right.
Okay, that is exhaustive because
That's right.
that's negated. So it's some things have potentiality and nothing has potentiality.
That's right.
So it has nothing.
That's right. Good.
So but then it has nothing to do with time. So why are we representing permanence as a property of time?
Now in Buddhism, time is nothing but this momentary. Time has been interpreted. There is no time separate from events.
Oh, okay.
Separate event itself is time. So space, time, they are all events. So our conception is like Newtonian or Naya conception, that things are their reservoir. Things are in space and time. But their conception is, Buddhism, everything is momentary, everything is an event. So it is an event ontology. Okay. Virtually, in Western Hemisphere, our Whitehead wanted to have a philosophy of becoming, but it did not become popular. And they are not aware of things which do not have potentiality. It came from Aristotle, that everything has potentiality. Only recently in existentialism, especially Sartrean variety of existentialism, this potentiality has been denied. He claimed you did whatever you could. You cannot say, I could have done something else. So, in order to understand Buddhism, we require this, your question, that this model, that space and time, they are reservoirs, that model we have to reject. Then we have to reject the model of potentiality and simply actuality, arthakriyakarithya, and nothing else. If being, that is why there is the equation, to be is to have arthakriyakarithya. Sat, definition of existence is to have arthakriyakarithya. That is why God is, does not have arthakriyakarithya. So, everything is explained, being, existence, sat, in terms of arthakriyakarithya, and that is momentary. Momentary here does not mean. Sometimes people think that it is split of a second. No, it does not have duration. It comes into being, and then it produces something, and then ceases to exist. But if there is upakari, then this something new will come into being. It will not be similar.
The one question that arises, and I think it relates to Professor Dara Chatterjee's question. Okay, I can understand momentariness not having time, and it's not happening it virtually creates time rather than being in time.
That's right.
Okay, that's one way, and it doesn't have duration and so forth. But what's still puzzling is, how does it work in a sort of a linear form? Why doesn't it go chaotic? Why doesn't it sort of go backward? Why doesn't the next moment jump back ahead of this moment and creates? What is the order in which there seems to be a kind of a linear progression of some kind, right?
Now,
I mean, what accounts for that? I'm not saying that therefore there has to be something permanent and so on, and I don't think potential necessarily answers that either.
Now,
it's so. Perhaps you want to answer from the floor, right? Come and take the floor. Yes.
I just want to see that, I'm just supporting you, that's why. I just want to see that in Hetu Bindu, Dharmakirti, when he's just explaining this causal series,
right,
he says that, for example, the seed moment, all the seed moments, they do not produce sprout. Only the last seed moment, after that moment, yes, the seed moment which immediately precedes the sprout, that has, he says, the atishaya, which is needed to produce that sprout. I'm just asking, what is that atishaya? If we do not believe that it has the potentiality, what else can be said about that?
When upokaris act on the seed, then next moment it produces the sprout.
Yes,
so
but the other seeds, all the preceding seeds, they do not produce sprout. Only
they
that
do not produce,
ultimate one.
They produce something similar to that seed. So they keep on producing something similar to that. Each of them is unique. But we have the language. That language is, I have pointed out, we use the language, it is similar to its kind, but that talk does not take place there. We are using the word kind because we cannot distinguish the seed of time 1 and seed of time 2. But when upokaris act on it, then it produces the sprout or sapling.
Like that, yes. Okay.
So the talk about kind is related to a different ontology. Talk about universal. So Buddhist talk only takes place in terms of uniqueness. Each entity is unique. So each individual is also unique. So how do you distinguish one individual from another? In terms of antara samudaya or these 12 items. And they can also explain memory, recognition, and transmigration, because they believe in afterlife also, if you are not liberated. But sometimes people say, if we postulate some permanent thing, then it becomes simpler. So,
just to understand that connection, you have to transcend the Swalakshana. The Swalakshana is unique. Just to, if you speak of similarity or connection or causality, anything, you have to in some way transcend the Swalakshana momentary thing. Otherwise, how can we speak? How can I say that there is a connection between the two? The seed produces the sprout. Someone must be different from the seed. Transcend the seed moment at least, to say that the seed produces the sprout.
No, it's just
that is only thing I want to say.
There's a comment back. Nilanjan, I think, has a question.
Yeah, okay, good. So forget about the Sattvanuman. It's not a very good argument. So let's forget about that argument. One, I think there's an independent way of framing the puzzle that Kuntaladi was posing. And I think there is something to that puzzle. So the thought is that suppose an earlier time slice had an indexical awareness, which is something like I, where I refers to that time slice, is undergoing this experience right now. So there are two indexical components, one referring to the present time, that moment, and the other one referring to that time slice itself. Now, when in episodic memory you retrieve that information, one indexical component is changed. It becomes I was experiencing that at that time. Yet one indexical component remains fixed. It was not he was representing that thing at that time. So the thought is that there's something interesting that happens, where one indexical is changed and the other one remains fixed.
Right.
And the thought is that if you want to preserve this appearance, one good explanation is that there is something that has persisted over time. Now we can quibble over whether that thing has strict identity conditions or not.
Our perception of Kant would come into it too. Go ahead.
So one thing is that you need to explain what's going on there, what at least why one indexical component is being changed and the other one isn't. And that doesn't have to do with anything with understanding the Satvanumana or not. The question is how do we give the semantics of I in the first place?
Now in Buddhism, you have only perception. Yes.
No, we should move on.
No, only perception and inference. And the objects of perception, like Plato, objects of knowledge and belief, they are different. So in Buddhism, objects of perception are shalakshana and objects of anumana are shamanna. They are universals. So
That's not related to this.
So these two levels are different, and there is a phenomenal level and invite করব পিছন থেকে কোনো প্রশ্ন That's right.
Here is a question from UB Dasgupta. No mention about freedom fighter Sister Nivedita. So, of course, Sister Nivedita was not a direct freedom fighter, you know.
No, you have not done. Swamiji was the inspirer, and she was. You know, yesterday I have spoken a question, and I said that she is the queen of Indian freedom movement. I think you have to do some more studies. I can send you papers.
No, I have, but I had no time. I had no time to read. And one more thing. See, was she arrested?
No,
anytime.
But she inspired a generation. You know, all the...
That inspiration is there. That is why I told you she is not a direct freedom fighter. She inspired people to fight.
Yes.
Yeah,
and nobody like her. You know, in her generation, there was nobody like her.
I have.
You know, Ajit, a lot of leaders said that Vivekananda made the pedestal and she ignited the fire.
No.
After that also you will say she was not a freedom fighter. I can't accept it.
I didn't say. No, it is there in my paper, but I could not read because of lack of time. Okay, thank you. And you have to answer this one.
All right, next question.
Which one? Nivedita in Oblivion. Seminar in the name of Nivedita.
She was a freedom fighter.
On 3 papers.
But she was not arrested.
In philosophy.
Non-freedom fighters were arrested.
No, but there she was the English woman, that's why she was arrested. Any person was arrested not until 1930s.
What are the other questions?
Now,
She was an Irish.
this one
Been revolt in Ireland.
says here, Nivedita in Oblivion, P.V. some Gupta. The seminar in the name of Nivedita on 3 papers on her,
Can we
on
ask
14 on
questions of each
philosophy.
other? Understand the question, do you?
Now, there is a question here, Nivedita in Oblivion. Some Dasgupta, seminar in the name of Nivedita on 3 papers on her, I mean 3 papers on Nivedita perhaps, and 14 on philosophy. Now, that question,
Better I answer this because we are the organists.
sure.
He's going to answer it because he
You see, we had several seminars on Nivedita in the last 1 or 2 months. And you know, Nivedita also was a great thinker. You know, Swamiji propounds 4 yogas, the combination of 4 yogas. Today somebody was suggesting me, Maharaj, why there is no Ravindra Sangeet today? I don't know, this is not the occasion for that. And Swamiji spoke about Gnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, then 4 yoga. So there should be equal blend of this, otherwise will become imbalanced. So this was exclusively meant for philosophical discussion. And we have done it. And Nivedita, if she herself were present here, she would love to see this. And the scholars from East and the West. And what makes me more delighted is this Gargis and Maitreyi is also here. They're crossing the men and they are answering. This is something very delightful which Nivedita and Holy Mother wanted. I think I have answered your question.
So nice.
Can I have a question across this way? Is that possible? Or do I have to write the question?
We're happy for it. Sure.
Right. Okay.
Sure.
So I have a question for Malcolm on the Mimamsa. The Mimamsa, the response to this question of non-referring object and whether there was metaphor. What happened to the discussion about the lakshanas, the jahad lakshana, jahad alakshana? I mean, there's all this sort of stuff from which you derive Gauni, Gauni. So there's also the grammarian tradition behind it. Not Bhartarhari. I'm really thinking about Bhaskara and thinking about Panini, Patanjali, and other Bhoja, other kind of other grammarians, who develop very sophisticated theories of artha, and it wasn't just the direct. So what were the term, the mula artha and lakshana artha and abhida and so forth, right? I mean, so and the Mimamsakas are kind of taking some of that, or at least responding to that. In the Abhava thing, I've shown that theirs is a straight response to what the grammarians they thought we're not doing well enough. And I think I'm thinking of Kunjini Raja. Kunjini Raja is the meaning, the book
Indian
on
theories of meaning.
The theories of meaning.
Indian theories of meaning.
Indian theory of meaning.
Yeah.
So
Kunjini Raja.
Right. So I think if I remember the stuff that I did in Shabda Praman, I think I brought in the Mimamsakas in those. Well, at least the Vedanta Paribhasha has that. Now, where are they taking it from? A lot of the stuff they're taking from the Mimamsakas. They're taking something from the grammarians as well. So, but that was not, I didn't hear that part as a sort of response, maybe a construction of non-referring objects.
So let me make sure I understand.
The other theories about lakshanas and jahad lakshana and all the sort of there's quite a sort of series that they develop on that. So they don't go straight to the grammarians do go straight to Gauni, right?
So I'm sorry, who doesn't go straight to
the Mimamsakas? I didn't see you bring that in.
They don't go straight to Gunavritti in what context?
You're right, Gunavritti you said.
Right. So it depends on what's whether it's lakshana or gunavritti depends on the relationship between the mukhya artha and the secondary, right? And so yes, in some cases you're absolutely right that it's going to be indication. So sometimes it's something that we might consider figurative, like feed the sticks when we're talking about pramans. Sometimes it's something that we might consider sort of semantic, just within the section, the sentence, right? When you say that the cow is to be tied up, gaurano banjaha, it's the cow refers to the cowhood or the universal, and then there's lakshana, which gets us the particular cow, and so those are relationships of things like inherence and association. Gunavritti is just the qualitative comparison. So if I understand understanding your question is there's different ways of parsing out these kinds of categories, Gunavritti and Lakshana, that come after Kumarala. In the Alankara tradition, which is largely indebted to him. So that's absolutely the case. That's absolutely the case. Yeah.
So virtually your view is Gunavritti and Lakshana. Gunavritti is concerned with the qualities.
The qualities, yes.
And Lakshana is
It's kind of a catch-all bucket in some ways. We might call it metonymy, but it's some kind of association or inherence relationship, right? That you find a whole list of those in the Nyaya Sutras, what these kinds of categories are, and they're also there in the Tantra Vartika at the beginning of the Jaiminese Mimamsa Sutras. He lists out what those characters.
Because Lakshana is used always. Common will be that there is some inconsistency,
yes.
So you take resort to Lakshana.
Yeah, there's something
so
padita.
Similarly, in the case of Gunavritti also,
Yes,
if there is
same.
inconsistency, you take resort to Lakshana.
Right, they have, sorry.
So your example like fire sprinkles or the hut on the river, right? I mean, what are we using here?
So Agni Sinchati doesn't become an example of Gunavritti until later. It's actually an example early on in the literature of just a failure of yogyata or semantic fit, and it's sort of a nonsense sentence, but later on it gets taken up into sort of a metaphor. You see this in sort of Noam Chomsky gives us colorless green ideas are sleeping furiously, and initially that's an example of something that is totally semantically acceptable, totally grammatically acceptable. There's nothing grammatically, syntactically wrong with it, but it's semantically a mess. But then people came up with all these metaphors for it, which is what the human mind does. Right? And so when you have this failure of yogyata or semantic fit, there's some sort of search for what the result is. So Mukulabhatta, the thinker that I'm really enamored with and who I've been writing on, for him, every Gunavritti comes under Lakshana. Right.
Okay.
So there's differences in terminology which get a little bit messy. For him, abhida is just the communicative function overall, but for other people, it's mukhya. So,
but even within Lakshana, there's about 3 or 4 different.
Right. There's a lot of different relationships. Yeah. And to make it even more confusing for Mukula, under Lakshana is ajyaropa or superimposition, which, of course, for Gumarla, you wouldn't put these two together. So there's linguistic things. Time. I'm hearing that time is falling away from us here, so perhaps we should conclude.
Or another question.
Or another question. I'm not sure which the indication was there. What's that? Questions are all over. Questions are all over. Okay, so talk among ourselves. Okay, so do we have someone who's going to come up and wrap us up for tea? Jay is?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So we can go back and sit.
Okay. Okay. I'll go to the dais now. Concluding remarks.
Sorry. Too many things going on.
We'll do the valedictory.
I know. It's interesting. Yeah, no, it's not waiting.
Pages, mission, all the honored guests, sisters and brothers. To begin with, all of you have made our dreams come true. It was a dream, but this seminar has substantiated that it is not a dream, it is a truth. Etat saitam sattam vaitat. It is truth. Now, we look, there is a poem, we look before and after and pine for what is not. When you look back, we think it is not only a successful seminar, but also a melting point of the East and the West. As papers have focused on both Indian and Western philosophy. Some of the papers are very illuminating. They are focused on Indian, some of them are focused on comparative philosophy. And we have some leading scholars, erudite scholars from Western horizon. It also represents a range of diverse thoughts or views of ancient philosophers, from Vedic thought, which is some 10,000 years old, to recent philosophy, both Indian and Western. Hence, it represents, I should say, It has generated not only Nyaya, Nobbo Nyaya, but Nobbo Nobbo Nyaya. It has generated not only Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, but Neo-Advaita Vedanta. It has continued to reflect on Swami Vivekananda's practical Vedanta. It has extended the practical concept of practical Vedanta. It has introduced a Neo-Advaita Vedanta. New interpretations. It can accommodate all the views, as I mentioned before. It is Nirvirodhavada. It has no, it can include, it has no opposition, Nirvirodhavada. It has no opposition. It can include everybody, all the views, and thereby it gives you an holistic picture of the world. And the oneness of Advaita can resolve all the disputes, individual level, social level, and global level. All the religious disputes, because Swamiji says religion should be universal, it should be rational. So, and aim is to alleviate suffering. So the concept of Indian philosophy, as I mentioned before, 3. Moksha Shastra, Andikshiki, and Darshana. If we include all of them, thereby we can resolve all the problems, we can bring about consistency, and thereby alleviate suffering, and thereby we can pay for peace and happiness. Now, hence it represents, it gives us a different dimension to our thought and thinking. Now, the views of Western philosophers have been mentioned. The views of current Western philosophers or linguists, such as Chomsky, Fillmore, Goldman, in the context of knowledge, have been mentioned by different scholars. And they have mentioned regarding perception the views of Western philosophers as well as Indian philosophers, and comparison between them, and how Indian philosophy can reflect on Western philosophy. So there are three or four ways of doing philosophy. One is, what is the need for today? One is to translate the works of original philosophers with commentary. If you simply translate, then it is difficult to understand. Translate with commentary. That is very useful. This task we need. Second one is that we can compare Indian philosophy with Western philosophers. For example, Vedanta can be compared with Hegel, Bradley, and we point out differences. Similarly, existentialist conception of angst, anxiety, can be compared with Buddhist conception of dukkha. But more important thing is how Indian philosophy can solve the problems of Western philosophy. How Indian philosophy can suggest better solutions. How Indian philosophy can add new dimensions to Western thoughts. For example, as some scholars have pointed out, that negative causal conditions have not been accepted. But in Indian philosophy, negative causal conditions will go back to Shankha, Karikas. So, all these concepts and so much discussion on negation, so much discussion, very rich. This will add a new dimension. Same thing regarding causation. There are different types of causation. Shankha theory is one of them, Shankha Yoga. Then you have Buddhism, then you have Nyaya Vaisheshika, then you have Mimamsa, different types of causation. And that can illuminate, as I pointed out, the entire Western philosophy and add new dimension to it. As only recently existentialist philosophers are talking not in terms of capacity or potentiality, but Buddhist philosophers long time ago have talked in that language, but which remained totally unknown to Western philosophers. Once I faced this problem, they asked me, how can you get rid of potentiality? Because they are working in Aristotelian model. Then I pointed out, even in Western philosophy, only recently Sartre has pointed out, but Indian philosophers have debated long time ago. So this can solve the problems of Western philosophers. So as well as some unsolved problems remain, coming from Russell, coming from Plato, regarding knowledge, regarding belief, regarding doubt, regarding truth, and our philosophical system can reflect on it and suggest some solution to these problems. We have also focused on the contributions of Sister Nivedita, including the continuation of the projects of Swami Vivekananda's practical Vedanta. We have focused on it. A lot of speakers have spoken on Sister Nivedita's contribution, and I think all of them are continuation of the practical Vedanta of Swamiji, because practical Vedanta is to alleviate suffering of beings here and now. So we have to follow this method, and Sister Nivedita has done that, and she has extended the very conception of practical Vedanta in terms of political, socio-economic progress and education. So, and her relationship to the intellectuals, artists, scientists, and dedicated freedom fighters. I should not use the word nationalist or terrorist, rather they are dedicated freedom fighters. They are dedicated to the reign of Dharma, the rule of Dharma. Where there is adharma, she protested. So she should not be termed as supporters of terrorists and so on. These terms should be eliminated from our vocabulary. So she is carrying the banner of, I should say, the Dharma, as she also supported a galaxy of intellectuals. And some of you have pointed out what Tagore has said, what Jagadish Chandra Bose has said, and so on. So it is a very profitable seminar. Moreover, you have focused on many topics. People have raised many questions, very illuminating questions. I learned from you, from every one of you, because Swami Vivekananda says you have to learn from everybody. And it is admission, frank admission, that I have learned a lot from all of you. And we have discussed also very basic questions which we should continue. What is Dharma? Levels of rules, evolutionary nature of Dharma, doubt, belief, false belief, erroneous perceptions, knowledge, sources of knowledge, philosophy of language. We have discussed empty terms. He has introduced problem of meaning, although we have not gone at length, because my feeling is the Nyaya view can solve the problem of empty terms, because Nyaya does not accept the view that we deny sky flowers. Denial of sky flowers also is postulate sky flower. It says the sky has absence of flower. Similarly, we do not deny Bandha Putra. Bandha has absence of offspring, or offspring has absence of Bandha as mother. Therefore, this one can illuminate entire Western philosophy, because a lot of philosophers claim that we have to postulate the existence of the non-existence, some sort of Meinongian ontology at some level or the other. Similarly, we have mentioned free will, determinism, fatalism, although some scholars have not used the word fatalism, but fatalism is also important in the context of hard determinism. Sometimes it is claimed in Western philosophical literature that fatalism is the same as hard determinism, but it is not. That is another topic for discussion. And whether Ramakrishna's view is hard determinism or not, that is to be explored, because in our literature, jnana is the cause of desire. Jnana janna bhavet ichha, and ichha janna bhavet, so on, so on. So jnana comes at the center, jnana comes at the apex. So if you have right knowledge, then you will have right desire. But if you do not have right knowledge, then you do not have the right desire. Therefore, that area is to be explained or further. Similarly, cross-cultural attitude always is very rewarding, and it will falsify Kipling's claim that East is East, West is West. Twins shall never meet. But we have shown, you have shown, we have shown together, all of you, that we can meet together. And therefore, we can enlighten each other. We can enlighten each other, and thereby we can have access to Western culture also. Philosophy should be introduced in Western universities, because to my knowledge, only a few places courses on Indian philosophy are offered by philosophy department. In most cases, it is part of religion because they do not recognize it as a philosophy, or in some cases, it is part of anthropology or part of history. Now, the point is how to do philosophy, Indian philosophy also. It is not part of history. Philosophy is never dead. I talked to my Panditji, he told me, if you cannot substantiate, keep on modifying. We do not have any blind faith. We can revise our categories, we can revise our views in the light of new investigations, in the light of new scientific thoughts. So I got this from both Pandit Dinesh Shastri as well as Pandit Vishwabandhu Tarkatitya. So the points are that it is not part of history. History is important, but it is a discourse on rational basis. You have to substantiate a particular view on the ground of reason, on the ground of evidence also. So if we cannot substantiate, then we can modify, and to the extent it is required. Then another very important point here, this seminar, that we got some budding, young, dedicated philosophers. That is something great. And I want them to carry the banner of our culture and thereby make inroads to Western philosophy departments, offer courses on Indian philosophy, offer courses on comparative philosophy. Same thing, we can organize conferences or seminars here and invite scholars from overseas so that they realize the importance of Indian philosophy. Now, contributions, I should say, contributions of Swamiji's in this seminar is unthinkable. We should serve Swamiji's, but they are serving us. God is coming to you. I never expected this type of hospitality, this type of kindness anywhere in the world. You are carrying the message of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda is no longer with us, his body, but his thoughts, his spirit, I can see in Swamiji's here. Now we pine for what is not. We should have future programs, seminars on metaphysics, epistemology, philosophy of language, logic, mathematics, values, and this seminar, I should say, in one word or in one sentence, that it has materialized our dreams. This seminar is an unthinkable success, as our hall cannot even accommodate so many scholars. It is an upsurge of Sartre. I never understood what is an upsurge, but this seminar gives me a glimpse of upsurge of Sartre, which we can understand. Response is overwhelming. With this note, I would like to offer my pranam to the living gods and goddesses.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Professor Shaw. As they say, all good things must come to an end, and so must this seminar. And one of the yardsticks or parameters for judging the success of the seminar is it keeps you yearning for more. And it raises more questions than the answers it provides. So with this note, may I now request Revered Swami Pragyathmanandaji to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
ओम यथाग्नि दाहिका शक्ति रामकृष्णे स्थिता हिया सर्वविद्या स्वरूपां तां शारदां तां प्रणमाम्यहम्. Revered Swami Supananji Maharaj, other monastic members, the eminent scholars who have assembled here, and my dear friends. Since last 2-3 days, we have been contemplating on a picture of a rustic lady from a remote village of Bengal, sitting face to face with a Western lady who represents the best of Western culture. They are gazing at each other, and we wonder what is going on between these two great personalities. We don't know what happened, what sort of interactions went on in between them, but there is a lotus at their feet, which represents love in our Indian tradition. And Mother Sri Sharda Devi, she could not speak English, you know. Of course, Nivedita learnt Bengali much later, but still they are communicating in their own language. What they might have thought of, we don't know the workings of their minds. But this lotus is there. Mother loved intensely Nivedita, and Nivedita became Mother's slave. Sister Nivedita considered Holy Mother as the best example of Indian motherhood. Holy Mother represented the Indian motherhood in its best form. That's what Sister Nivedita believed. Then what was the result? I think this picture I am referring to, which we are, just offering pranams every day when we enter this conference hall. And there is the picture of this rising sun. Yes, that led to some new renaissance and the new knowledge, as just now Mr. Shah mentioned, something new, something creative. And there is no end for that. We are evolving. he spoke about the dream. He spoke about his dream. Actually, there was an inspirer behind that dream. What inspired him to dream that dream? That person is sitting before us, revered Swami Suparnanji Maharaj. So he inspired him. He comes every year. But how come this type of an international seminar, this cross-cultural, multidisciplinary philosophy, dealing with cross-cultural, multidisciplinary philosophy. So he took it up, an old man. He's old only by age, but very, strong-willed person and more energetic than we so-called young people. And since last 1 year, we have been corresponding. I will show you the file, a voluminous file. In that, nearly 2/3 of the correspondence between him and us. So the very painstaking efforts he put forth, and this is the result. And he is happy, he is smiling. Seeing his smile, we are also happy. We are very much grateful to both these persons. Revered Swamiji, we offer our pranams to you, and also to Sri Shah, our gratitude to him, and namaskars. And then again, our Western friends, we have come all the way from long distances to enlighten us. Really, it was an enlightening experience, and a lot of new information also, because, we are born here. Shaddarshanas, something or the other, we know. Even if you go to a village person and ask him something about religion, he will tell something. He will talk about karma and say Nishiddha karma, this karma. They were telling all that he knows. More or less, they speak. But from your angle, we could listen to those. And some of you, you are so thorough in our Indian system of philosophy. That is also very heartening. We express our gratitude and greetings to you also. And there are, of course, our own people, our own philosophers, Indian philosophers or Pandits, whom Mr. Shah refers. He wanted to bring about the interaction between the Indian Pandits and the Western philosophers. That is his language. And really we have done it. And my gratitude to our Indian philosophers also, who have been with us. And one more thing I have to tell you, in our department, Center for Indological Studies and Research, there are many faculty members like our Taradi, who is sitting in front of us, Professor Tara Chatterjee, then Professor Krishna Rai, and many others. So they also helped us in planning this. Professor Prabal Sen is not here. He had to go out. But he also helped us a lot in suggesting some of the names of the Indian Pandits. We thank them all. Of course, just now he was mentioning, it is the upsurge. Really, the response is very overwhelming. Earlier, those old-timers, they know, there used to be seminar in the below conference room. Pandits will sit in camera, they would sit in a secluded, segregated place, and they will have indoor discussions. And the other audience, the observers, they would sit in the next adjacent room, somewhat dark, and the screen would be there. We can only see the discussions. We cannot directly participate. But that is also again our revered Maharaj's idea. No, let public also participate. Let them also interact, and let there be a bigger place so that more number can join. I can see even till the end, till the last row, people are seated. It's a very good sign. It used to be 100, now it has touched 300. That means twofold increase. It's again Mother's grace. Then I have to thank all of you, all the audience who have come and encouraged all through. Our heartfelt thanks to you also. And then there are different departments of our Institute of Culture, like a guest house, and then our own department, the Jivan Da, who designed this, the man behind the scenes, he silently does. Then Vasudev Adhikari, many more. So they also deserve our appreciation and thanks. And I also extend my thanks. I would like to extend my thanks to all those who are involved in this and have been responsible for making this seminar a grand success. And finally, we offer our prayers to Holy Mother Sharda Devi, and we offer our pranams to Sri Ramakrishna, Ma Sharda Devi, and Swami Vivekananda, and of course, Sister Nivedita. So by these few words, we come to the end of this function. Hemadri will announce, he has some announcements, and I conclude by saying, Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
May we take the liberty of kindly reminding you once again about the national seminar on the occasion of Swami Abhedanandaji's 150th birth anniversary on the 17th and 18th of January this year. You might register yourself for the event as a participant with the reception downstairs, and please collect your tiffin packets as usual when you walk out of the corridor, and the tea will be served in the foyer like yesterday evening. Thank you very much.